put away in his shell.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Iowa City Community School District Board of Directors Board meeting. I'd like to start by introducing the directors at the table. Director Ruthina Malone, Director Phil Hemingway, Director Lori Rotland, Director Sean Eystone, Director J.P. Clausen, and Board Recording Secretary Kim Colvin. Steve is out of town today, and Janet will also be gone from the meeting today as well. First thing that we're going to start with is the student representative updates, and we'll start with City High.
Hi, thank you for having me, and I'm here to talk about the great things that have been happening at City High recently. But first I wanted to congratulate Representatives Russell and Eystone for being recently re-elected, I know, and also our newly elected board members, Lisa William and Charlie Eastham, who I know are sitting back there. So congratulations to all of you. It's really wonderful. So first off, our school newspaper, The Little Hawk, recently won All Iowa News Team at the IHSPA Iowa High School Press Association Conference this month. Our women's cross-country team placed 9th at the state meet, which was great. We had 2 City High seniors, Simon Weiss and Ellis Chen, win the Iowa Caucus Debate Tournament, and they qualified for the Tournament of Champions, which is a really prestigious national debate tournament, so that was wonderful. We've recently had 21 all-state musicians named from City. So this month, November, is National Novel Writing Month, and I don't know if any of you have ever heard of National Novel Writing Month, but in case you haven't, it's essentially a sprint for writers where you have to write 50,000 words in the span of 30 days. And we've had several students in City High's writing club take on this challenge very ambitiously, and I'm really proud to report we have several of them on track to actually making it and writing all 50,000 words. And we have several others who've been working really hard at it, so that's been a great accomplishment for them. We also have a really fun tradition every year at City where we decorate doors for the Halloween. And we did that again this year, and that's something students always love to do. Recently at our City West football game, we had Dance Marathon, had a real spotlight on them, and they raised more than $1,600, and they did activities to raise awareness about pediatric cancer. The swim team recently placed 8th, the girls swim team, placed 8th at the state meet, which was a really amazing result for us. The drama department's been working really hard on our winter play, which will be 6th, 7th, and 8th of December, and that's A Christmas Carol. And I think that's all I have for you tonight, but thank you for having me, and I hope that you have a lovely week.
Thank you. And next up, we'll have West High.
Hello, everyone. Again, congratulations on your spots. My name is Aditi. I'm a junior at West High this year. So just last week, West High had its 3rd annual Best Buddies and Pals versus Faculty basketball game. Best Buddies won, as usual, and it was a really great experience for all the students to come together. We had a pep band with a lot of members of the marching band and the cheerleading squad, with some teachers also participating in cheerleading, and it was just a really fun school experience. Just last month, IHSPA also recognized both West High's yearbook, The Trojan Epic, and our news publication, West Side Story, at the State Journalism Conference. We won All Iowa Yearbook and News Team of the Year, respectively, for each publication. Also this past weekend, the girls swim team placed 4th at the state tournament as part of the combined West Liberty team. Junior Aurora Roguer from West and also sophomore Scarlett Martin both won 2 individual races, and Martin even set a new state record, which was very impressive. This is also going to be the first year that West has a new girls wrestling team, and the season is going to start early December. There's a lot of interest, and I think they're going to have a good season. The speech and debate team has also continued their streak of success. We've had 3 first place finalists in informative speech, original oratory, and humorous interpretation, as well as second in informative, spontaneous, and extemporaneous. The debate team is also doing really well. Over the past month, 59 West High musicians earned all-state honors this year in orchestra, choir, and in band. This is among one of the highest numbers of all-staters selected from a single high school in the state. And of this, 3 were also additionally chosen to be part of the Iowa Junior Honors Orchestra. So this is a product of all their hard work, and we're very proud of the music department for this. Additionally, 2 seniors, Carissa Burkhart and Julia Fink, were also selected to be part of the 2020 American Choral Directors Association of the Regional Honors Choir. So these were chosen from a region of about 11 different states. So that's also crazy impressive of them. West High's FTC robotics team, Trobotics, has also started the season, and they have an impressive start. So far we are ranking, we have 13 wins and 5 losses, and we also have more competitions coming up. So they're looking forward to qualifying for the state championship for the 4th year in a row. Recently, West High students also participated in the Iowa Youth Mock Congress event at the state capitol in Des Moines. This is a really great opportunity and experience for them, and it stimulated the Iowa Congress, where they discussed important issues and current events, and also learned some social skills and how to debate politically and problem solving. Coming up, we have a lot of things going on at West. Just this Thursday is the Diversity Dinner, hosted by the Psyched Club. All families are welcome, and there's food and spoken word poetry and songs and dances. And this Friday we have the Music Playathon with food, games, and performances, and 100% of the proceeds are going to the Music Auxiliary Program. Also this weekend we have more math competitions, another robotics tournament, and speech and debates. We have a lot to look forward to. Thank you for having me. I'll see you soon.
Thank you. And before we jump to Liberty, I'm going to go to Tate with Valerie, since you're all at the same table there.
Hello, my name is Valerie Tinian. I'm a senior at Tate High School. Tate High School is officially registered for this year's Poetry Out Loud competition. Poetry Out Loud is a national poetry competition open to any student in grades 9 through 12. Students select and memorize a poem from the Poetry Out Loud anthology and recite that poem in a school-wide competition. One winner and one alternate are chosen to represent the school at the state finals in Des Moines. The statewide winner goes on to an all-expenses-paid national competition in Washington, D.C. Last year was our first year attending Poetry Out Loud. We had 2 students compete, and we sent a winner to Des Moines who represented Tate with pride. This year, it is our goal to have at least 10 students enter the competition. Public performance gives students confidence to focus on pressure, to overcome social anxiety, and to provide students an opportunity to celebrate important accomplishments. Tate will hold its school-wide competition sometime in February. We'll keep you up to date and invite you to attend. Coach Kevin Coffrin has 18 Tate students signed up for the 2019-2020 basketball season. Currently, they have 2 two-day tournaments and are starting to schedule Monday evening games. The team held their first practice on Monday, October 14th, and their first game on Monday, November 4th. They lost the game to a tough team, but the boys played well together and showed great sportsmanship. All of the students participate regularly, are involved, respectful, and having fun. As a staff member, Coach K loves bringing together students from different backgrounds to share a common goal. Student Council hosted an awesome Halloween party. Leading up to the holiday, Student Council sold Boo Grams and used the profits to help fund future events. The Halloween party events included cookie decorating, a movie with popcorn, and pumpkin carving. The feedback from the students was that it was a great time and a nice change of pace. As a banner PBIS school, we are always looking for ways to embed celebration into our schedule. We love fostering leadership of the students through Student Council. Ms. Petrie, librarian, and Ms. Fitzgerald, consumer math teacher, are working with Kate Degner from the district's innovation team to create makerspace extension activities for students. So far, students in consumer math have learned the basics of 3D printing software, have dabbled a bit in coding, and had a blast competing each other in a competitive coding activity, and are still working on some challenging 3D designs. These experiences are new to all of Misfit students and provide opportunities for students to embrace critical thinking. We appreciate the board's support for libraries and innovation in the district and are grateful for the foundation's funding of our makerspace. Students who expressed interest in drawing the human form in our art studio class took part in a figure modeling class at the University School of Art and Art History. Students were able to observe an introductory painting demonstration by renowned Professor Ron Rosen-Cohen. They were able to draw from a live model with direct college-level instruction. Students were intensely involved and thoroughly enjoyed the opportunity. This was an important experience for students who excel in artistic expression. Walking into the grand architecture and touring the facility with a guide to take part in a class gave them a glimpse of what it would be like to seriously pursue a career in art. Tate High School now runs a career lab. Career Lab is an opportunity for students to meet with adults who can help them explore career options. As a variety of individuals from business and industry visit Tate about twice a month to talk about working in their respective fields. The Career Lab also has open times for students interested in talking more about resumes, applications, and so forth. Several students have attended Career Lab sessions, and we look forward to expanding the program. We are very proud to say that 8 Tate students have earned enough credits to graduate this trimester. These students are excited to get their cap and gown pictures taken and take the next steps for their futures. They have taken advantage of the supports and resources available to them at Tate, and we know they will embody the Tate way in the future. The rest of the Tate student body is also looking to these students as examples and inspiration for graduation. That's all we have for this month, and I look forward to keeping you updated.
Thank you. And Liberty High School, Ryan.
Good evening. My name is Ryan Eystone, and before I start, congratulations Paul and Sean for getting reelected to the board, and congratulations to Charlie and Lisa for getting elected, and thank you to Phil and Lori for your time on the board. Liberty had many first-time state qualifying teams this year, including the boys cross-country team, the football team, and the volleyball team. There were also individual qualifiers for the girls swimming and girls cross-country. The volleyball team had their state tournament appearance today against Pleasant Valley at the U.S. Cellular Center in Cedar Rapids. Sadly enough, the team lost their game, but we are proud because they put up a good fight. Going along with the volleyball game, students went to the game had the option of riding a bus to see the game. Having this option open to students made for a more inclusive student environment and helped students see a game if they didn't originally have the transportation to get there. Student Senate has been organizing our food and clothing drives for the months of November and December. The clothing drive will be running now until the 22nd, and the food drive at Liberty will run from December 2nd through the 13th, and will primarily go towards the food pantry at Liberty. Liberty has also been in contact with Hy-Vee about doing our third food drive with the North Liberty location on November 17th from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. During this food drive, we will have a list of items we primarily will need and hand them out to passing customers, and they'll just return the checked out food at the front of the store to us. We have had successful drives in the past, so we are hoping this one will also be the same. Liberty Music students auditioned for All-State on October 26th. We have had 5 band members, 4 orchestra members, and 12 choir students make it into All-State this year. It is a long and grueling process, but many are happy that it's over. Our choir program is especially happy about our success since we jumped from having 0 people to 12 people in this year, which means that we jumped from last place to 3rd place in our district. And we are very proud of all the Liberty students in the entire school district. Last Friday and Saturday, our student-led acting club, SLAP, put on 2 one-act shows at Liberty. The 2 shows were a drama called The Offerings and a comedy named The Rehearsal. There is much success with the shows this year, and the directors are thankful that they have great hands to pass the club on to. Thank you for your time, and have a wonderful Thanksgiving.
Thank you. And thank you to all of our students for coming out and giving us those updates. The next item up on the agenda is the ICEA update, and Brady Shep.
Thanks, directors. Thanks for having me. I'd like to thank, first of all of the candidates who ran for the board of directors. It takes a lot of courage to put yourself out there and say these are the things that I believe in, and then let the voters have their say. So I really appreciated everyone who ran. I know the teachers do as well. Congratulations to Paul and Sean and Lisa and Charlie for your victories in the election. We look forward to working with all 4 of you and continuing the great collaboration that we have. And I'd like to, I won't be on the agenda for the next meeting, so I know maybe this is preempting what will happen next meeting. But I'd like to just offer a sincere and heartfelt thanks to both Lori and to Phil for their time on the board. You know, your advocacy has been tireless. You are clearly committed to our schools and our students and our staff, and we just really greatly appreciate everything you've done. On a personal note, I've enjoyed working with both of you a great deal, and this board has been incredibly supportive of teachers and staff, and I appreciate your leadership in that regard, and know the teachers do as well. So, thank you very much.
Thanks, Brady. That brings us to the next portion of our agenda, which is community comment. We'd like to thank you for your interest in the Iowa City Community School District and your willingness to share your comments. You're reminded to give your name, address, topic in which you'd like to speak. During community comment, persons may speak to the board about topics relevant to the district. All community comment directed at non-agenda items and agenda items shall take place at the beginning of the meeting and shall be limited to 4 minutes per speaker. And with that being said, we have 2 speakers today. We'll start with Charlie Eastham.
Thank you very much, Paul, and congratulations to you and Sean and to Lisa. And again, my appreciation to Lori and Phil for your service. And I also want to recognize Stephanie, Michael, and Julie, who also ran very great campaigns. It's really good to work with all of them during this campaigning period. I just wanted to let you know that I was at the Black Voices Project meeting last night, which we had an extensive discussion about the proposal to establish crisis response teams. The group is still, in my mind, very hesitant to proceed with establishing these teams if there's some kind of police, law enforcement involvement. I'm here tonight. I know eventually I'll have a chance to work with this with all of you, work on this with all of you. But as I understand it, I was looking at the crisis response team timeline, and it looks to me like that you're going to talk about it at your work session tonight, but then in December, the staff is going to make a recommendation, which apparently we'll have to consider in January. So my thinking is that perhaps we could proceed in a little bit different way. That is, go ahead with putting crisis response teams together without law enforcement involvement on the work of the teams. Either asking the staff to do that, or to ask the staff to present us with a couple of options, one with law enforcement participation, one without law enforcement participation. And if law enforcement participation seems desirable over the next several months, perhaps we could add that into the mix. And perhaps if we proceeded like this, there would be a little bit more confidence, I think, on the part of communities of color that we are considering their hesitations about the direction that they perceive us as going in right now. So that's my suggestion, and I'm bringing it now because, as I said, because I think it's, if I wait until December, maybe a little awkward then. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Charlie. And next up is Julie Van Dyke.
I'm still concerned about the grant that was submitted apparently around the end of May, early June, right about when Sam, the 12-year-old girl at Southeast Junior High, killed herself after 7 emails that were sent by the principal, who it was not disclosed is married to the ICPD Secondary Schools Liaison investigator, Gabe Cook, who investigated that girl. Earlier on 10/25, I received a message from Sam's mom that her parents thank me for being a voice for them. You should be the voice for them. I shouldn't have to do this, and they shouldn't have to do this. She shouldn't have died, okay? I'm concerned about this grant because I see on the June 2016 Iowa State Department of Ed final accreditation site visit a reference that says that the ICCSD needs to add greater oversight of expenditures, and it goes on to say, in quotes, All contracts and agreements are signed by the board president as required by Iowa code, and then goes on to say, how can the ICCSD superintendent and his legal team not be aware of Iowa code as it relates to the Iowa Board of Education's procedural expectations for awarding contracts and agreements? So I will say it again, as I've been saying for months. Did Janet, the board president, sign the contract for the $60,000+ in the first year that you're looking at in your coordinator, your threat assessment team coordinator in your work session tonight? Because if she didn't sign off on that, and you committed $60,000+ by submitting that grant, of which my understanding is this was our part that we put up, without the board president signing that contract or agreement, you may be in direct violation of Iowa code, and you damn well better bet that Rob Sands is going to hear about it. So I suggest you backtrack on this position, on this entire grant right now, because you're in jeopardy of having moved forward on a grant that breaks Iowa law. Think about it. And to keep saying, oh, the police aren't going to be involved, the police aren't going to be involved, that's not what your documents today say. Under community partnerships to engage with on the crisis response timeline, it says quite clearly that community partners to engage all municipalities and local law enforcement entities, Johnson County Attorney's Office, Johnson County Department of Human Services, Johnson County Jail Alternative, Juvenile Court, 5th Judicial, Department of Correction. You are creating the school to prison pipeline, and your database is probably illegal, particularly if it contains any IEP information. You're in serious danger and putting our children's information in serious danger. When I look at the number of school breaches, and this school district has been hacked before, Power School has been hacked before. Pearson, if I understand correctly, has close to 1 million school children right now, and there's whose personal information was hacked and released, and there's a class action lawsuit against them right now. So you really think that you can build this database so nobody can get into it? Because I don't believe you. Also, who's watching our kids? And when the site visit and the more recent OSHA complaints were made, the outrage at the board from the administrators that people wouldn't go to the district administration and talk to them here. You know, it says right here in the 2016 Iowa Department of Ed that numerous interviewees described the district culture as retaliatory. And it goes on and on about that. So you know what? My guess, how long is it till the districts, when you get this database going and you start doing this data collection and monitoring their social media accounts, et cetera, how long until that starts targeting my kid or other people who stand up and dissent against you? How long is it till you start using that to target my kid and my family and everybody else in the district? You people cannot be trusted. And I wonder if this grant is illegal.
Thank you, Julie. Moving on, and the next item on the agenda is agenda approval. Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved. Second.
Kim, I think we're ready to vote.
Online voting is open. All votes have been cast, and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
All right, thank you. And the next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. And I believe Janet and Phil reviewed the bills, and Janet did send me a note and said that she didn't find anything out of order. She did ask for some information on Qualtrics license, which Kristen provided for her. Phil, did you have any updates on the bills?
Yes. We had $5.3 million with expenditures and the lion's shares coming out of the GO bond funding. It's $2.8 million. And 1.6 out of general fund. I'm surprised Janet didn't mention that there was a expenditure to ACT for $349. I also found several HVAC mechanical services that I feel should have been covered by our own staff. Could have saved us some money that way. Fencing, we had $1,045 to replace 2 gates, or repurpose or reposition 2 gates. We had, with our internal pest control, we had some roach treatments at City West and Kirkwood, and we had $420 worth of organic sweet potatoes that we purchased from local vendors, which we're always happy to see that we're utilizing those resources. And I would be remiss if I didn't call myself out that there's in here for, I won't speak for Director Rotland, but there's a $40 expenditure for plaques for us, which I think is a gross misuse of district funds. And other than that, that's what I came across.
All right, thank you, Phil. Any items that directors wish to pull?
Yeah, can we pull 16?
16? Okay.
And I would like to, just for public information, pull 6.
6? Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda minus items 6 and 16?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Ready to vote on that, Kim?
Online voting is open. All votes have been cast, and the motion carries with Directors Rotland, Ressler, Clausen, Malone, and Eystone voting yea, and Director Hemingway voting nay.
Items pulled from the agenda. Do you want me to go in numerical order there?
Sure.
Okay. We'll start with number 6 then, Phil.
Yeah, the main reason I pulled it is it just kind of floors me, the amount, the maximum balance that the district could deposit in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 banks of $430 million, which this is fairly substantial. That's just for public information.
Director Hemingway, those limits are what an individual bank could have. They're not a cumulative total.
Right,
And-
I said that it was between 6 banks, and yes, the total is $430 million.
And the only reason that it's brought to the board this time is that we're looking to consider what we will have with our bond funds when we sell the GO bonds in January. In February, and receive those. When we looked at our last year's sale, we came dangerously close to meeting the limits, and so this is to increase those limits just a little bit to make sure we don't violate the board's own approved resolution. So it's just an update of that.
Right, and like I say, Les, it was just for information, and it's 6 banks, and the total is $430 million. Move to approve.
Yeah, just,
Well,
oh, we're going
Second.
to vote on that separately, yeah.
all right, there's been moved and seconded to approve agenda item number 6, consent agenda item 6. And we're ready to vote, Kim?
Online voting is open. All votes have been cast, and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
And that moves us to number 16, which, JP?
Yeah, so, and I'm assuming this is, we're sending this out, going to get the quotes, vote on it later, right? And I guess my big question is why this isn't go bond? This is,
Well, it wasn't listed as a go-bond project primarily, to answer that one. And to answer your first question is statutory limits of this will exceed what are required for the Iowa competitive
Right.
bid law. So it will go out on a competitive bid opening and will be approved ultimately by the board.
so I guess, why wasn't this on the go bond? I'm just, I mean, it's a huge, $500,000, it's just a huge,
Yeah.
I mean, is this going to be,
Well, I think if you go back to the wording of the GO bond, it didn't include athletic fields as part of that. It was athletic facilities, but I don't recall Bates Field as part of it. So we just felt like we could do this with our Pebble funds for athletic fields.
and so we can do this with Pepple?
Yes, we can.
Okay. I just kind of wanted to make sure it's like a big
Sure.
ticket item on consent agenda.
Yeah,
So I just wanna-
and this is a direct result of community input over the last several months. There's been quite a campaign to improve the lighting at Bates Field, so.
Yeah, and I've seen that, and I appreciate that, and I know they need lighting. I guess I'm just a little confused if we've known about this for years and years and years, and it didn't get on an FMP, this huge ticket item, like, because to me, it's like, this is go bond, and maybe you give up a fancy wrestling room for your lights, or you just have to make choices and prioritize. And it feels like we passed an FMP, we passed a go bond, and now it's like, well, here's this other giant ticket item we knew we needed, and now,
Yeah, maybe a short comment to address that. Back in 2013, when we did the original assessment, it was back in January of 13, we went through all the facilities. They prioritized, the architects, engineers, along with staff input, principal input, prioritized the projects. And at the time, Bates Field lighting was not a high priority, it was a D priority. It was listed that way in the facility master plan. So as we knew we had limited funds, limited by the sales tax and ultimately the general obligation bond, we had to prioritize as we went through. And again, in 2015, I believe it was, we did an athletic facility master plan update to the original facility master plan, and it again listed the Bates Field as a priority D. And that had input from athletic directors and coaches and principals, so we left it there. But over time, those lights have deteriorated and gotten, dimmer. So it was just time. We actually had in our facility, or in our life cycle plans for this year to completely renovate Bates Field itself, the actual turf. So in discussions with the superintendent and other cabinet members, we approached the school and said, okay, we have a choice to make. We can renovate the turf or we can put up your lights. And I think based on the community input, they chose to put up the lights. And with the lights, there's several options. We talked about moving tennis court lights, but it wouldn't improve the candle power by more than 5 or 6. And we talked about leaving the poles that are there, but we could only get up to a candle power of 3. If we put taller poles, redo the electrical supply, and put different lights in, we get up to the 50 that's the standard in the industry. So there's been a lot of discussion back and forth, a lot of misinformation, bad information, but in fact, the time was right to do the lights, and we'll defer the Bates Field turf till a later project.
okay, thanks for the clarification.
Now, the tennis lights you allude to, are those the Musco lights that we sold on Gov Deals for $300?
I don't know if they're Musco lights, but they're halogen lights that have been there for a long time, and to answer your question, yes, they are. We determined we had no need for them on Bates Field.
$10 a piece.
And they're probably, 40 years old?
Okay, move we approve item 16.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve item number 16. Without any other further discussion, I think we're ready.
Well,
to-
I
Go ahead,
guess
Phil.
the one last thing I guess I would throw in on that with the final discussion is that I think the lights are too bright in North Liberty.
Okay. With that, I think we're ready to vote, which I think popped up on the screen, so.
Online voting is open. All votes have been cast and the motion carries with Directors Rotland, Ressler, Clausen, Malone, and Istone voting yea, and Director Hemingway voting nay.
That brings us to the next item on the agenda, which are public hearings. The first one's on the district calendars.
Now is the time and place for the public hearing on the ICCSD 2020 to 2021, 2021 to 2022, 2022 to 2023 district calendars. The purpose of the public hearing is to receive public input on the district's proposed 2020 to 2021, 2021 to 2022, 22 to 2023 school calendars. Are there any comments from the board? Any comments from the public? Hearing none, this hearing is closed.
Brings us to the next item, which is the public hearing on Horne Elementary School addition and renovation.
Now is the time and place for the public hearing on the proposed plans and specifications for the 2020 Horne Elementary addition and renovation project. Board of Directors set the date for this public hearing on October 22nd, 2019. Notice of public hearing was published in the Iowa City Press Citizen on October 23, 2019. The district will receive bids on this project at 2 p.m. November 21st, 2019, at the Educational Services Center located at 1725 North Dodge Street, Iowa City, Iowa 52245. Notice to contractors was published as required by law in multiple statewide plan rooms and on the Iowa City Community School District website on October 23, 2019. Are there any questions from the board? Any questions from the public?
What's that? Is the,
I think the question is,
It's
will
got a
we be
Keith
keeping
Haring
the
mural.
going to stay?
Yeah, it does, yeah. So, yeah, it will stay.
Any other questions from the community? All right, this public hearing is closed.
Thank you, Lori. Next up is the update from the Policy and Governance Committee, and I believe Ruthina is going to cover that.
Yeah, you'll have the legislative priorities here tonight for you to vote on. We are knee-deep in the 400s, working with Brady, who has joined us, since it does involve a lot of employee policies, and it's just been a labor-intensive review process. Board has looked through 100, 200s, and 300s, but again, copies are still with Kim. You have time until we come back to the board table to vote on those. So, yeah, we're going to continue with the 400s with Brady's assistance at the table, since it does involve a lot of our employee group, well, teachers groups.
Any comments, Sean? No? All right, thanks for the update, Ruthina. And I think the next Policy and Governance meeting is in, 2 weeks from today, which we'll continue on that. And that brings us to the presentations part of the board meeting. And the first one is the quarterly financial report for the first quarter. And I believe Les, you're going to handle that one.
Yes, you have the first quarter report in your packet. Probably the most important page that you look at each time is the unspent balance page. It's towards the end of it. A couple key things that Chase and Superintendent Murley and I spent some time on is just to think about when we want to update the key information in there. And since our certified enrollment has not been completed with the Department of Ed yet, we hopefully within the next couple of weeks will have that, even though the count date was back on October 1st. That's a principal driving factor, obviously, in the budget. We're looking at it to be up about 280 students this year, and so I did adjust for the current year the advanced enrollment number from 700,000 to approximately $1.9 million. So that increased the current year by 1.2 million. That's really the only impact of that related to enrollment that we've done. As soon as the enrollment is certified, we will plug that into next year's budget, as well as the projections from the demographer's report, which is due to the district later in December. Put those two numbers, we'll work those through the next 5 years. And in December, the Revenue Estimating Conference will meet and provide the projections that the state legislature has to use for their budget next session. When we have that information, we'll have a better idea of whether the 1.5% that we're currently using continues to be appropriate and adjust further, and that will be about the time when we move into the budget process for next year. And so we will keep that same budget process next year, the timing when we'll come to you in January with that information, but about that same time we'll be updating this information. Hopefully on that next quarter report that you'll get, we'll also have the updated, those color-coded schedules when the Department of Ed releases information from all of the school districts for fiscal 19. It usually is done sometime in December, but if they're pulled away on enrollment for any purposes and not getting the financial stuff, it may be later, but as soon as that's available, we'll have 19 there and continue to update that. So I believe there was one question about the management fund expenditures from Director Godwin, at least that she sent to me, why that one was at 91% for the year. The response is that the management fund is front-loaded essentially for the year. Both the early retirement incentives from last year's retirees, as well as all of our property casualty and workers' comp insurance has to be paid in the first quarter of the year. And so as property taxes catch up to that are collected over the year, that fund will look better as the year progresses, and that 91% will come back more towards the norm for the year.
I had one question. You kind of answered it with, I don't think we know quite yet, but the one number that stood out to me on this giant spreadsheet of numbers, right, was, it's line 47 and looking at this year, and it has $1 million of anticipated budget cuts, right, after the year of $5 million of budget cuts. So I guess I was concerned with, what that's going to bring come budget season, coming up. But is this number totally dependent on getting the updated enrollment counts?
Very much so, Sean. It would be our hope that with the increased enrollment and anything above 1.5%, that number would go to zero. But we left it there knowing that we're not out of the woods in terms of the budget recovery and returning unspent balance to above the 5%. If you can see that about 3 years out, we get back to 5%. We don't want to lose sight of that goal for the district, and so we've left the $1 million in there at this point in time to recognize that we need to continue to be cognizant of our budget moving forward. But it is our hope that, the couple favorable things with enrollment and the economy would allow us to not make those cuts.
I would appreciate that.
I think the only thing I'd add is, and Steve kind of said this last year as well, that even if we can get that 1 million number to come down or be erased because of the increased enrollment, we still know that it's going to be a tight budget year. And so we're going to look at being, pretty flat again. And as Leslie said, it's really dependent on what we get from the state. The 2.06 last year was nice and a bit of a surprise. We could use another one this year, but really, regardless if that number shrinks or not, we know that it's going to have to be tight again this year. Hopefully not cuts, but not looking at the ability to add a lot either, unfortunately.
And the 2% would be nice, but we'd really like 4.5.
Be greedy, but yes.
Well, that's what we're asking for up here, so. Any other questions on that? Thank you for that, Leslie, for that update. And the next one is the annual progress report, and it looks like Matt and Amy, you're going to handle that?
Good evening, everyone. We're excited to be here tonight to present. This line item would have probably been better categorized as teaching and learning reports because we've got several. If you haven't noticed, the APR looks a little bit different this year. What we decided to do is try to have it as much teaching and learning focused, and we've taken out some of the other department information, so around operations and management. However, those reports are not going away. Chase and his team are going to bring those back to you in February or March, and you'll see those similar reports or additional information there. So what we did do is we brought a couple of other reports that have typically been standalone, the Sia Committee Report as well as the annual wellness report, and we folded that into the APR. And then we left the curriculum review reports, English, language arts, and library, outside of that just because they end up being fairly large reports. So you'll hear from Matt and I to begin with, and then Laura Daly and Diane Schumacher will end the presentation. Let Matt talk for a little bit.
So one of the first things we just wanted to highlight were some of the demographic pieces of data you have there. And so you can see the difference in the certified enrollment and the plus 87.48. As we just kind of come off this little budget presentation here, we know that last year that enrollment growth wasn't quite what we wanted to see at count time. which put us in a little bit more of a difficult budget situation there in the spring. Our low SES population of students continues to grow by about 1.5%, and then as well as our race and ethnicity breakdown continues to move in the direction of gaining more minority students as we progress through the years. And so you see the two, or the last 2 years there, the 17-18 and then the 18-19 numbers there in front of you. Further demographic data, you see decline in special education students over the, we kind of grabbed a number from about 4 to 5 years ago there, and shows the overall decline in the percentage of students served in our district through special education. You see a big increase in English language learners, as we've reported to you before, and then preschool with the amount of students served, also a nice increase there from about 5 years ago or 4 years ago there.
All right, we're going to get into a couple of the next slides deal with academic achievement. Fortunately or unfortunately, all of this information has been, not all of it, the majority of it has been put in front of you at different times. So we are just now receiving the Iowa Statewide Assessment of Student Progress reports, the ISAS reports, and are downloading them and starting to go through them. So prior to the last week and a half, we haven't had access to that testing, and that testing was done for the first time last April. So we are left with the same set of information around Iowa assessments that you would have seen last fall. So that slide is really not a lot of new information for you in there. I'm going to speak to the FAST, and then I'll let Matt speak to the graduation and the ACT scores. The FAST data has also been put in front of you. I think that was in August. We shared with you what that looked like for the last 4 years for reading and the last 2 for math. You saw it banded by, I believe, the RAM different school levels, as well as by ethnicity, race, and the various subgroups. So some highlights include, just to summarize that we are seeing overall some positive gains for all students, although I would say in those 4 years worth of data with reading, probably had our second best year worth of dating last year in reading, as we saw some of those numbers slip back a little bit. But we do see just an overall proficiency climb for our Black and African American kiddos, multiracial and American Indian and Alaskan Native students. As far as the FAST math assessment, it's hard to draw too many conclusions yet, given that we've only given the assessment for 2 years in a row. But all of those categories, minus maybe just a couple, we saw increases, and so we're pleased there. And just a reminder, FAST is a universal screener that we use 3 times a year with our K-6 students. It's meant to cast a wide net, and so that we're catching all of the students that might need additional supports. And so we'd rather go in and intervene early than have missed someone. Achievement gaps, no matter what assessment that we're looking at, continue to exist for ELL, FRL, IEP, Black or African American, and Hispanic Latino students. Even though in some of these cases we are closing that gap, there are still gaps there.
Yeah, I don't have a ton to add on this slide, but I think ACT-wise, I would just draw your attention again to the Equal Opportunity Schools initiative we've been working on, so we continue to serve more of our students in advanced placement courses, and with serving more students in advanced placement courses, I think the result of that is more of our students considering college, and then we see more students continue to take the ACT test as well. And so I think there's a nice link there, and obviously ACT is invested in some of that Equal Opportunity Schools work too that we're thankful for. And so our scores continue to rank above state and national averages there. The graduation rate at 90.6, while good, there's still work we can do there, right? I mean, we'd love to see that one 100%, and we know that students that aren't graduating on that 4-year timeline, what that means for them. So that's kind of an urgent one for us to keep monitoring and seeing what we can do for early credit acquisition in high school, because we know that's what leads to successful completion towards graduation.
All right, so next we get into the section around student behavior statistics, and This has several different pieces that get pointed out, dropout rates, as well as suspensions, office referrals. Daily attendance, and then mobility and stability statistics. I think the thing that we're really excited to show tonight, and we've alluded to it at different maybe work sessions and things, is what we've seen over the course of the past year with our suspension and office referral data. So as you look at a couple of pages there, we put together a graph so we could highlight what was happening over the last couple of years. And I gotta find my page. But specifically, if you would look at the bottom of page 39, page 43, both are showing declines in overall number of suspensions and office referrals. And so we tried to paint a picture there by using that graph of where we've been and the work that's been ongoing and what we've seen. So still not numbers that we want to see, but definitely decreasing. I think just a concentrated effort with having very specific CSIP goals, maybe overall as a district, but also at each of the individual buildings having their own specific goals. And then just tons of work and heavy lifting on every single person that works for this district is about helping to implement strategies like PBIS, MTSS. We've had the implicit bias training. We're working on professional development around restorative practices, but we can see some of those fruits of our labor and heavy lifting paying off. But it's taken a lot of people to get there and a lot of effort, but it feels really good when we start to see our results turn the direction that we want to see. Just that implementation is key. Just like I mentioned for the academic side of things, though, our most discrepant students, specifically in suspensions and office referrals, continue to be our Black or African American students. And that's an issue that we need to continue to work on, be super vigilant about, continue to have conversations around, and continue the work there.
And so the other thing, oftentimes, of course, like Amy just talked about the discrepancy there, you still do see there's some tables in there that show you the demographic breakdown. So while those two tables we drew your attention to don't necessarily show that, they just show the total, you can see some drilled down data around the demographics still in the report there too, because those are the numbers we use and look at. For the Sia Committee, just keep going, okay. For the Sia Committee Report, we had two meetings. Again, that's the School Improvement Advisory Committee. You always approve the membership of that committee. A couple of you are part of that committee. We held meetings on December 4th and April 9th. We reviewed data from this progress report, our strategic plan, and then the comprehensive equity plan that we had at the time. And then we take that input around the district's reading, math, and behavior goals, including school climate, culture, and work to try to refine our plan and improve our plans based on that larger group's feedback. And so you see some text there on page 36 that talks about the recommendations made by those committee members. I think in particular what I found helpful from that group was how it informed some of our work moving forward around the comprehensive equity plan we'll be bringing you on December 10th, and how it led to the formation of that development group and some of the work we did over the summer and yet this fall to bring that together. So I think that was instrumental in kind of tying those three pieces together, our strategic plan and that with the three goals there and to our comprehensive equity plan. So we'll be excited to show you that as well. Yeah, I guess we could take questions before we hit like the wellness report, if you have any in particular around those slides or other things in the report.
I just have one real quick question on student behavior, since we just covered that part of it. Where would vaping fall in your category? Do you consider that for your use?
What did you ask, Paul?
Vaping?
And tobacco?
It's
Controlled substance.
Okay.
I flipped too far.
So that's under drug use? Well, we have use and possession of drugs, use and possession of alcohol, use and possession of tobacco.
Right, so depending on, if you're just looking at the overall chart that shows
On
suspensions,
39.
it would be broken out. I think when we said controlled substances, if you look on the very next page, you see the overall headings called controlled substances. So
Okay.
we've treated that as a tobacco offense.
Yeah, and, drug, there are some things on here that you look at and you say, okay, the trends are going good, but on the drug use and possession, that's, as I remember from other reports, that's something that we're still having some issues with. And as far as the weapons, that showed a decline even with the in-house and, or I should say in-school and out-of-school suspensions that way. I had to, on the reading on page 7, with the Iowa assessment, the drop from 9th grade to 11th grade, and, it's kind of going down with that. I know they used to test seniors, and then they said, well, there isn't much in that because the seniors aren't going to put in on the test, so the data wasn't all that strong. Is it getting to the juniors now?
No, I think what we see there is a historical dip from that, especially you draw the comparison between the 9th to the 11th, but oftentimes we see it from the 10th to the 11th, and so that's something that actually the language arts team reviewed in their curriculum review process, is what's happening there, that our assessment results continue to take that dip from the 10th to 11th grade year, because you can see it reflected in some of the other charts too, like the line graph on the 10 through the 12 pages, page 10 through 12, if you see there, you can kind of see that class falls behind. So while we still rank above in some of those categories, we know we have a historical dip there that's problematic for the 11th grade class.
And essentially all tests are reading tests, aren't they?
Well, you have to read to take the exam, yeah. Mm-hmm. Other questions?
Yeah, I have a question. Just as we're kind of looking at this behavior data, year over year, and we're starting to implement some different, implicit bias training, trying to target the discrepancies. And I don't know if the board needs to see this, but are we able to see kind of where our discrepancies, like which school our discrepancies have closed, whether it's academic or behavioral, and what are they doing in those schools if it's working, just to kind of identify what we're doing, what's working and what's not working. What do the AVID schools look like? What do the PPIS schools look like? And just so we can see kind of some year, and maybe not just the raw data, but what's the discrepancy look like year over year by school, depending on what programs they're using. So we can start to get an idea, are we barking up the wrong tree on some of this stuff? Do we need to look at some different things? Where is it being successful, and trying to drill down a little bit and understand, if there are places where our discrepancies are closing, how much are they closing by, and what's going on in those schools that's closing those gaps?
Good question, JP. I think that's the
Yeah.
same thing we ask ourselves, right? Is if something's working somewhere, we want to take it somewhere else and show that to them too. And I think a good example you saw was when we did the PBI's presentation at Liberty, right? And some of the referral data that reflects the change and some of the progress made there, and then how that informs our work across the secondary system for some of that as well. So, good point.
And I don't know if this is a place to present it, but I think it'd be nice to see that, kind of somewhere in this report, kind of like you did with the bar graph on page 39, with just, again, showing that year-to-year change, but specifically with discrepancies. And then I guess, just to point out, the big number that jumps out at me is the defiance, insubordination, noncompliance. I mean, that's a super subjective call on that, and it's quite dramatic, the discrepancy there. And I guess I was a little, I don't know if I'm confused, but I guess from what we've heard anecdotally from schools, I would expect some of this drug use to be a lot more. I guess it'd be nice if it were none, but 51 kind of, it seems smaller than I guess what we've been hearing anecdotally. Kids vaping in classes and openly, in restrooms and that sort of a thing. I guess I look for more office referrals there, maybe not suspensions. I get that not everything rises to that level, but I guess that kind of stood out to me as different than what we're hearing sort of through emails and on the ground. So, I don't know.
Well, I think it's one of the, I mean, it's definitely a problem. I mean, you know, I think that's something that we've been engaged with and trying to talk about it, because any of that, like you said, in our school buildings is problematic. But I think it's also one of those things that there's, you know, the shock value around it, right? That when you see one student doing it in your school, I mean, it's a pretty public conversation, right? And so it doesn't take, I don't think, a whole lot of those events to create a lot of conversation around it either, you know, is kind of the anecdotal feedback I'd give to that. But it's definitely something, you know, that we've seen an increase of, and so you may see more of them next year when we present it to you, as far as the referrals we're having come in this year, and some of the ways we're trying to attack it, not just through the punitive measures as well. So,
And can I ask, you know, what, just because that's such a, it just is happening so fast, right? We're learning lots about vaping specifically. And I mean, I follow this pretty closely. And now, you know, so I guess what are we doing on the publicity campaign to help kids understand, like, the latest information about this, you know, additive in the oil may, you know, CDC has probably found a connection, trying to educate our kids a little bit about, you know, I mean, I don't know how easy it is for our buildings to respond that quickly to something that, but, you know, we're looking at 43 deaths in the state. So I think that kind of urgency about, you know, this isn't, you know, this stuff is, it's not just like smoking is bad for you and you'll get heart disease when you're 55. It's like you might get a lung disease tomorrow from something that you're inhaling today. And I don't know how quickly we can respond with that kind of, you know, publicity, education, that sort of a thing.
I don't know, Laura, if you want to jump in with any specifics, but I know, and I stepped out a little bit early that day, but we engaged with a group of parents here a week or so ago to look at some of those very things, as far as, okay, what's the publicity part look like? How do we partner with parents so that we're sending a dual message, so it's not just coming from the school, because I think parents are asking for information and education about it as well, and, you know, asking us what can we, you know, do or offer in that lens. And same thing, I think we've had administrators ask that question, you know, about trying to engage their school communities about it. And so I think that's something we're actively working on to try to get out. And Laura, anything you want to add to it? Or
the only thing I would add is also just doing a quick audit of where our health curriculum is. That's not an area that I oversee, but in working with our health coordinator, she's kind of doing a crosswalk of what's embedded within the curriculum. So in what coursework, you know, what's covered during the elementary, and at what grade levels regarding substance abuse, and then also at the junior high, like personal development class, and, you know, some of the health-related courses. And so she's taking a look at that. She also happens to be the counseling coordinator, so there's a lot of natural connections with that. But the group of parents that a couple of us met with recently, we're taking a look at what resources we could tap into and do. Maybe some parent education, how to work with the high schools to try to put some, you know, different little pieces of information out there in a way that they're going to listen or look at it, you know, thinking developmentally appropriate. So I would acknowledge, yeah, that it's happening fast, but we've got some ideas, and we've got another meeting set up, and so, yeah, anything that we can do it's definitely becoming a big issue. But I do think that's one of the things is, you know, our health curriculum up to date too, to kind of embed some of those, you know, issues that come up in society that maybe we aren't prepared for, but we want to make sure that we teach to our kids.
Just so you know, JP, it's one of the things that I actually have noted down for something I'd like as a future agenda topic, mainly because it's, if you've read the West Side Story or the Little Hawk, both of them, I think, in the last month or so have covered it as a future story. So, you know, it's in the minds of their students too. So it was something I was going to bring up later for agenda setting as a future topic, is something I think was important that we cover.
Great, yeah, thanks. Thanks.
Of comments, if I may. Oh.
I think we had a couple other things. But
Okay, I was going to say, if you want to cover your stuff, and then I can ask
Yep.
my questions.
Yeah. Did you want to talk about the wellness, Laura?
Sorry. So really not much more to add, but one of the things that we've talked about doing with the Wellness Committee this year, Jessica Jimerson is our new health services specialist. And she actually was fulfilling 2 roles here kind of at the beginning of the year until we were able to backfill her position. And so now that she's full-time in the capacity of working as the health services specialist, which is formerly Susie Polton's position, she touched base with each of the areas that our wellness committee focuses on, and we'll continue these goals that are listed as is for this year. But one of the things that we actually brought up is how do we revive and kind of refocus some of the efforts of the wellness committee and maybe bring in some of the areas that are currently happening, such as, you bring up vaping, for example, because, how can we tackle some of those issues through a variety of avenues? And one of the parts of the policy is really to take a look at the effectiveness and the outcomes of the wellness policy. And so in talking to the committee members, Jessica's recognized that we may just need to revive that, has guidelines for snacks, anything from guidelines for snacks to efforts in physical education. And so these are our goals for this year, but we've recognized that we may need to pull in a few more community partners that we have listed on there. And if anybody has any questions, let me know, but those are going to be our areas for the rest of this year that we'll focus on.
And then the last couple of things we had were around the curriculum review reports. Diane, you want to?
Sure. So just to kind of explain the process for curriculum review, we work on an 8-year cycle that's aspirational, depending on kind of our budget and whether we're able to really fund a new curriculum material cycle. Sometimes that gets pushed off a little bit. Brady's behind me, and I think he's been waiting on social studies for a while here. I think we might be 8 or 10 or maybe 11 years by the time we get to social studies. But last year, I know, but last year we did do the English Language Arts and the library self-study. We have our chairs for English Language Arts. Jen Brinkmeyer is here. Sarah Yoda had a family commitment, so she wasn't able to attend. And then Christy Harper's here too, so they're able to answer questions if you have any. But we also always have a board member who participates, so thank you to Sean for stepping up last year and participating in that. The ones that are coming up are our fine arts area, so music and art. So we'll be looking for a board member if you want to jump on those reviews and avoid the social studies one in a couple years. This is the one to get on, right? Fine arts. So that'll be coming. So what happens is we have a large committee made of teachers and community members and parents and students and obviously board members, administrators, who come together and they look through quite a bit of data, and then they come up with a listing of our strengths, of our limitations, and then an improvement plan to address those limitations. And the improvement plan then takes us through the next 8 years, and we continue to work on things that are identified as needs in our area. And then obviously one of the biggest issues is typically this is the time then to review materials as well. So for the English Language Arts, we looked at new reading materials, and because of budget constraints, we were only able to purchase for the kindergarten through 2nd grade this year. So we purchased a Super Kids curriculum that we're implementing in almost all of our buildings. Again, because the budget was kind of tight last spring, we weren't sure if we could get it to every building. So we had a few that we didn't bring it to this fall, but they'll all pick up next year. Then we'll expand it. We're purchasing Wonders curriculum for 3rd through 6th. And then the secondary teachers are looking at curriculum this school year. And hopefully the budget will hold out and we'll be able to purchase then also for next fall a new secondary curriculum. So, Lori, on to questions, I think.
Okay. Got a list. Thank you. One question I'm going to ask about wellness right off the bat is on page 49, it mentions that on-site mental health services, there's 182 kids served at the school-based health clinic. Does that also include the mental health services that are happening in the buildings? Is it Tier 3 intervention, says 182 kids?
Oh, what was the question with the board? Sorry.
On page 49?
Yeah.
That would just be the ones that are served at our Healthy Kids Clinic, I believe, whereas the ones that are the school-based therapy that occurs, within the setting of the school would be different set of data.
And I just wanted to point that out because there's a lot of therapy going on in the schools, and I wouldn't want the community to think that we only have 182 kids that we're serving with mental health services. There's actually a lot more kids being served than this shows, especially since this only includes a school-based health clinic. Lots more mental health services. That's something that I've expanded my work in as I'm leading the board. That's something I'm doing, and I'm realizing that there's a lot of mental health services being provided by community partners in the schools. It would be interesting to see the number, actually, if Corrine could provide that at some point, because I think it might be nice to track that as well and see if how that tracks in relation to the number of reports of health reports, and now I'm going to not be able to find the page page 50, next page, for anxiety, depression, ADHD. There's an awful lot of those, and we see the numbers went down a little bit from last year in the area of anxiety, but I think we all know that that's an issue that's increasing with our student population, younger and younger. So these numbers might not reflect what's actually happening with our students in that regard. A few other things. The Iowa assessments that you mentioned, how that information is not in here, will that be put together in a similar format for the board going forward, or will that wait until the next annual progress report for that to come out?
We plan to present it when we're ready and when you guys are ready to receive it, so I would guess December or January.
Okay, great. I won't be here at that time, but I know that that'll be very important to review, and I understand that the assessment changed a little bit this year, and so it's maybe not apples to oranges as we look at that, or they look at that going forward. I am a little concerned about, a lot concerned, in fact. On page 31, you had indicated that the reading FAST scores had improved for all students. I see it's improved in math. I'm not seeing it in reading there, but and in some grades, as you compare kindergarten to first grade to second grade, I'm looking at growth. I'm always concerned when I see a drop in the number of kids that are proficient, that are losing proficiency as they're going. And of course, we don't know, are these kids that were in our school the year before? There's a lot of mobility, I understand that. But it's concerning to me when I see those numbers. So like, for example, kindergarten to first grade, 72%. Perhaps I need to be done talking. Is this my,
No,
is this
you
my
speak
signal?
as long as you want.
Kindergarten to first grade, 72% to 68%. And, we might say, oh, that's only 4 percentage points. That's a lot of kids. So I don't want to, try and be too negative here, but I do want to be cognizant of that's a lot of kids, and I'm concerned. I'm glad you're looking at all the different things that you're doing in the different buildings to see curriculum-wise, programming-wise, what's working, what's not working. But I would be remiss if I didn't point that out. I feel it's necessary to just point out that I noticed that, and I hope our incoming board members as well will pay attention to those numbers. And then also, I just will never forget when Latasha Deloach was here, and she pointed out that 50% of the Black and African American children are not proficient. And I feel like that needs to be said again. We still have 53.76%, and that's a really, actually, that's the number of kids that are proficient. So, 47%,
Right.
46 and some percent. That's, I feel that I would be remiss if I didn't point that out. So just to share with the fellow board members, I asked for a little bit more information about preschool, and I should forward that to the rest of you. So on page 46, it lists the number of kids that are enrolled in preschool, but I actually asked for, now my computer disappeared, but hang on a second. I asked for some more detailed information about our preschool numbers because I don't think this tells the whole story. So we have, yes, we're increasing the number of kids in preschool from year to year. But one thing I want to point out is that we actually have a number of vacancies in our preschools, and we have a number of kids on the waiting list. And that's because there's vacancies in programs that are not accessible because of the format of our preschool being 2 hours. And then there's kids in other areas of the city where there's a waiting list. And so so there's two issues. There's location, there's the format of the program. For example, Twain's Shared Visions full day program has 15 kids on the waiting list for a 20-kid program. So there is a need for wraparound care. I'm saying this for the board because I'm going to not be here to say it. Going forward for the new board members, I want to reiterate there is a need for wraparound care. We are not filling all of our seats because it's not accessible. And it's not necessarily that we need more preschool seats. We need the wraparound care so that they can access the preschool seats that are already there. We've got, actually right now, we've got 37 vacant preschool seats, but we've got 36 kids on the waiting list because, again, different areas of the city and also different programs, kids needing to be having services that are more than just the 2-hour preschool day. Let's see. Oh, another thing I wanted to point out is, and I don't know what page it was, but there's a listing of summer programs that you had, the 21st century programming and the high school credit recovery programming, and I think that's really great. Of course, I'm very supportive of that. I am disappointed that, yet again, we aren't able to have the junior high summer programming, and I would love to see that come back. From what I heard from the junior highs, that was very, very successful in preparing kids to be successful in junior high. Is there anything that you can speak to about whether that will come back at any point? I'm talking about the transition from 6th grade to high school, or to, I'm sorry, junior high.
It was dropout prevention funded prior, and that we just had a lot of pressure on that budget with the expansion of schools and trying to outfit them with the same services we've had at the other campuses. So I'm not hopeful in the near future that that's something we'll be able to bring back. I think just from the looking at the budget where it's at this year and knowing what we're going to just try to continue to do in the following year. But I would say it's not something that's off our radar. I mean, we know that that would be a valuable thing to bring back if we get the opportunity to do that.
Especially when I see we've got 7th graders that aren't proficient, and I know we're looking at last year's numbers for Iowa assessments, but 6th graders and 7th graders, you know, anything we can do to ease that transition. I know that it was there was some fundraising that went on a couple years ago for that, and then that had to stop for I'm not sure what reason. But could that be funded by the foundation, the junior high programming?
I think the problem is paying staff through fundraising dollars, and it's not a sustainable model for us. I don't think it's something we like to try to dip into in that way, and so that's really why I think that's not a viable option for us to consider. I mean, if it's something we need to compensate staff for, it needs to be a budget item for us.
I agree, it's not a sustainable model.
Yeah.
Again, because I won't be here to say it, future board members, current board members, please bring back that program. We desperately, in my opinion, I've heard the junior highs talk about how helpful that is to the students, and they feel like it makes a difference. And it certainly can't hurt when not all of our students are proficient. I would love to see that junior high programming come back. I think it was it only like a 2-week program or something? I think.
Yeah, the history of it really was it was more treated traditionally in the summers like a credit recovery, like if students had failed then they had to come and do like an online class, somewhat like we do for our high schools. And then so we had about a 2-year window where we had spent a lot of time and energy in reformatting that and almost treated it more like a prep program for like building for success for the next grade level. And so I think once we kind of figured out the model that was great, then it became kind of prioritization of school year services or summer services, and we had to, we felt it was best to try to keep those during the school year services. So I don't know if that answered your question, but it took me back to where we started with it a long time ago, or even when I started here in Iowa City, what it was, and it was not high level. It wasn't good. It wasn't good use of our funds, and then so we had reformatted that and had some success with it. And I think if we brought it back, obviously that's the model we would look at again.
And are there are some of kind of community agencies doing some of that with some of their folks, neighborhood centers maybe? I want to say I've heard through like juvenile justice, some of those populations are targeted to kind of, because that seems like if we can't do it for everybody, maybe there are populations we can target who are going to need that help, that transition help from 6th to 7th grade. And, working with neighborhood centers, the Fifth Ward Saints, some of those groups that are, because I know with JJYD we're really trying to target 5th and 6th graders because there's not much for them. Junior high, you get athletics, you get clubs. 5th and 6th graders are sort of that in-between stage. So JJYD is kind of target some of its money towards, whether it's 4-H or Big Brothers or Big Sisters who are targeting, and maybe kind of partnering with some of them, we could, because I get with the staff thing, and we're going to have somebody in our building if they're going to tour the junior high, we have to have somebody there. And I don't know if we could, partner up to really target those most vulnerable populations where we're seeing our discrepancies and give them that, that boost. Oh, it was called Boost, actually, wasn't it? No?
I don't remember.
Yeah, Boost, right. So I don't know if that's a thought to maybe reach out to them and coordinate more as far as the funding piece and them providing staff and transportation primarily.
Thank you for the report. I know you've heard me say it a couple times. This is one of my favorite reports we get all year. So new board members, have fun with the new numbers when they come.
Be beneficial to have a work session with the new ones just to kind of go through it and discuss it and everything like that. There is a lot in it, and
I know for some of the onboarding of the new board members that we'll plan to cover this report when we go through, or make sure they have a copy and answer any questions too.
yeah, I always had trouble with that word onboarding. It's too close to waterboarding, but that's just me. Okay, maybe that was my personal experience.
Any other comments, discussions? No? All right, thank you guys for providing those reports once again. Moving on to action items. The first action item on there is the 2019-2020 legislative priorities brochure. Just a note, so when the new board is seated and the new positions are decided on, that little green dot on the first or one side there will change. After that, if we approve them tonight, basically will be what's printed up so that we can get going on that as this session will be starting there in the first of the year. So I'll open that up to any discussion that anyone has on that. I think we've covered it, but if you guys have any.
I'm going to make a comment that it's not on here, and I don't think it rises to the level of being on here, but I want to just make you aware that with our polar vortex that we experienced last year and likely will be continuing this year, there were folks that experienced job issues with having to make a choice between go to work or provide care for your kids. And there's a group of us that in the community that are working with the legislators on trying to get some legislation passed for some worker protections. And so we actually are aiming to have a meeting with some legislators on December 14th at the Coralville Library. I will make sure you all are aware of that when we get it scheduled. When it's finalized, at this point it's tentative. But I would hope that as you go forward with your legislative priorities, that you might also just have in the back of your head that we need bipartisan support for worker protections when we have extreme weather events or extended weather like we did last year.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you don't get that meeting on the 14th, there is one here on the 13th. Legislative the forums start up again, so you'll at least be here.
This one's specifically for childcare topic,
Okay,
but
yeah.
yeah.
But we'll make sure, because I do remember that came up, and I think they talked about it.
There was a
little
bill
bit.
presented last year, but it didn't go anywhere.
Right.
So we're hoping
Yeah.
to kind of be advocates to move that through this year.
I just have one comment. Again, it doesn't rise to the level of being on here, but when I was at a UEN meeting recently, one giant struggle that we have with recruiting and retaining candidates from out of state is reciprocity, that we don't accept other people's stuff from other states. And sometimes we're asking administrators and teachers to jump through ridiculous hoops to be able to teach in this state. And we're one of the only states that has 0. We don't, and they're going to comb through your courses. We're asking people with PhDs to take 26 extra hours just to have the privilege of teaching in the state of Iowa. And it's killing us on candidates. And all the UENs, all of the districts are struggling with the same thing, is they'll get a really great candidate and they're like, no way I'm moving to Iowa. I need to get another degree when I've got my PhD from wherever, my license. And so I don't know where our legislators stand on it. I think that might be an area, oftentimes our legislators are just in agreement with everything that we do, and it's just kind of we're patting each other on the back and saying, go do this. But this might be an area, I honestly don't know where our legislators stand on it. I'd like to know, but it's going to hinder our recruiting efforts if we're going to be looking out of state. And it's something that, I don't know if it takes legislative action. It might just take BOE action to change their licensure requirements, but it's a problem. And it's something where we could potentially, again, not to put it on our legislative priorities, but I know we would have a lot of support from everybody in the UEN to push that with the legislature. So it's something to keep on our radar.
I guess also UAN has their own legislative priorities too. I would assume maybe that's going to show up on there.
I don't know if it will. It came up, but they do their priorities based on we're going to send ours to them, and then they'll kind of bring everything together. But I know it was a pretty heated discussion about that at the UEN meeting I attended a couple months ago.
Yeah, well, I'm glad to see that we're prioritizing career and tech education and the importance of that. I wouldn't be opposed to putting something in there in the state that its national and international identity is agriculture, to put in something there along the lines of the value of ag education, but that's up to that. I do believe, though, flexibility in TLC funding will help us greatly. And when we ask for a 4.5% increase in a year when commodity prices are down and markets have been closed, that's going to be an issue in a state where a lot of our sales tax revenue is tied into an industry that's having a bad year. But getting flexibility with the TLC funding could help us with a lot of things. And it's not to say that it goes away, or that if some districts don't want to change a darn thing, they could easily maintain it. But I think when you're asking for money, when there's already money in this category, if we had the flexibility to utilize it with what the board would see as the best use for that funds, board and staff, that's a way that you could increase the amount of money getting into your schools for staff and things of that nature. So I think that that's one that we should consider putting on there going forward.
And I think that's a good one too. I think in the last session, they freed up some flexibility in some of the other categorical funds, which helped out. So that's definitely worth asking for. I just wanted to make a personal note that I've read a lot of other places across the state now where mental health services for students is one of the things that is rising to the top of their ask as well. So us having it on there, I think you're going to see a common theme from school districts and across the state asking for more help there. Just a note on that. Any other comments or discussions on this brochure? Looking for a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Kim, we're ready to vote.
Online voting is open. All votes have been cast and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
All right, thank you. And the next one is the IASB Delegate Assembly Representative, which that happens next week, next Wednesday and Thursday. So that assembly's on Wednesday. I think JP, Sean, myself, Janet is going. Ruthina is not. And our two newly elected board members are also going. But I think between the three of us, one of us will probably have to be that representative for that assembly. I know Janet can't do it because I don't think she's going on Wednesday, right? Just the Thursday session. So you're doing UEN already, right?
I am doing UEN, yep.
Okay. And that leaves the two of us. And I don't have an issue doing it if you don't have, I don't know if you do or not, but.
Christy's husband might be mad at me because he's supposed to do a training for me that morning. So if I bail on it, and he might be mad at me, but I can go either way. If you're interested in doing it,
I mean, yeah, I can go.
I would gladly let you do it.
Okay. Well, I won't nominate myself, but you guys will.
I'll nominate Paul to be our representative to the Delegates Assembly.
Second.
Online voting is open. All votes have been cast and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
All right, thank you. The next two items are for Grantwood AEA Director. This one's for District 3, which covers, one of these covers all of us. And so there's a recommended action to approve Lynn Cannon as Director of District Number 3.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Kim, we're ready to vote.
Online voting is open. All votes have been cast and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
And the next one is Director District 6, and
Move that we cast a ballot vote for Carol Mons as Director of District Number 6 for the Grantwood AEA Board of Directors.
Second.
any discussion? All right, Kim, we're ready to vote.
Online voting is open. All votes have been cast and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
All right, thank you. That brings us to Director Liaison reports. Does anyone have anything they want to highlight on the report? No?
I already talked a little bit about the Child Care Summit. You'll be hearing probably more from me over time as I work with that group for Johnson County. But as you see there, we met and talked specifically. I'm working with a subgroup on before and after school care, thinking about all aspects of that from preschool through upper or junior high age, that it isn't really before and after school care, but kind of, like summer summer activities and those kinds of things. That's where the summer program came up for junior high. So anyway, probably be hearing more from me about those things as we move ahead with our work.
Yeah. Well, I attended all the board forums that were held, and I was very interested, and congratulate all those that were successful, and congratulate those that were not for raising issues that are important for the community, and for all to be engaged and participate in the process.
Move on to the next item agenda, which is agenda setting. So we have an education committee meeting next Tuesday, the 19th at Northwest, and this will be covering AVID, and it's this AVID at the secondary level as opposed to just elementary, which we've done in the past. So that will start at 4:30 in the library. Correct?
And since that's a committee, is it possible in that committees we can have other people sit on? Can we invite our newly elected board members to just sit and be part of that discussion?
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. And since they're here, you're invited to come to 4:30, learn about AVID, sit in on the education committee meeting. This year we've been trying to get them out at the schools so we can, get out and always have a reason to get out and visit different schools in the district. And usually we're at the school where the program is happening or impacting it in some way. So please come.
And then we have a board meeting. Well, there'll also be a policy and governance meeting on the 26th, right at 4:30. Which will be, that agenda will be added later. And then we have a board meeting, which was, you can see listed on there. Basically what we'll start, we'll have our regular part of our meeting. We'll do the consent agenda. They'll cover the canvas of votes. We'll recognize Phil for his time on the board. And then we'll adjourn. And then the board secretary will take over as temporary chair. We'll call the meeting back to order. We'll administer the oath for the new board members, elect board officers, kind of go through the annual meeting there, and then give a couple updates, and that will be the meeting for that meeting. I don't know if it's the Tuesday before Thanksgiving, so I don't know if you really want to add anything to that meeting, but is there any additional items that board members want to look at in the future? I know I mentioned the vaping thing. I just want to have that as a on your mind topic from the papers. And then I think once you get the assessments back, that's going to be another one that again was something I think I read in the West Side Story. One of the two that they brought up a really good article about assessments. But then I think also Diane, your email today about how to those are coming late, and then the next ones are coming in April. So just kind of an update too that will be helpful for the public to know, like kind of what's going forward with those assessments and what they mean. Anyone else?
I don't have anything to add. I just wanted to mention, because we did talk about this at P&G. It's an annual meeting, right? So one of the lines on there is adopting all the policies and for all of us and the newly electeds. It's the current policies there, because we are not close to being done with going through. The 400s are taking a while, but we kind of feel like changing all of those sort of has to happen en masse. We can't do it in one piece at a time. So this is just kind of that formality of, adopting the current policies as they stand. And then at a future date, we will have all of the newer policies that have gone through a more deliberative process and looked at and approved at a later date. So I just want to make that clear.
Anything else, Ruthina? No? All right. And then the last thing that we're going to do tonight before we adjourn is make sure we recognize Director Rowland, who will be somewhere much nicer than at this board table at the meeting on the 26th. So we wanted to take the time to congratulate you for your 4 years on the board here. I just wanted to touch on some of the highlights that I remember working with you. I think if you think back to 2015, before you and Phil were elected on the board, and I actually got on a year later, but the Gazette held a forum for candidates, and we had a ton of candidates, so they made us split into 2 sessions, and I think the 3 of us picked the second session, and we were the only ones there. And I think that was actually the first time that I probably met you, and we talked through issues, and I was impressed then. So that always kind of stuck with me that we ended up here on the board being those 3 that chose that late meeting. Just wanted to point out some of the things like you've mentioned tonight, very passionate in the preschool thing, and I appreciate all the work that you've done on that. You led the task force for the bell schedule, which I think you're seeing across the country now. People are switching to our bell schedule. Big push in California recently, which I'm sure you saw, but that was a lot of meetings that I appreciate the work that you did on that as well. The boundary work that we've gone through, really the 4 years that you've been on the board, all the boundary work, numerous committees that you've served on, including the insurance committee and some of the other committees, the work that you've done there. I think you've been an excellent representative for the city of Coralville, but also for the entire district, and not just the city of Coralville, but I know that's where your home is, and you reside there and have students there. I think you should be very proud when you walk into any of the newer buildings or renovations to be able to see your name on that plaque, because of the work that you've done there to help with all the schools across the district and impact the kids' learning and the teachers' environments and community overall. And also that you spent a year as the vice president, which I appreciate, and the other 3 years that you were on the board. Very much appreciative. Always a calm presence in the room, and always knew that when this report came out that you would say, I do have a list of questions, and you would seem to wait to the end, but they were always great questions, and I made notes on most of them. So thank you for your 4 years of service. We do have a plaque for you to recognize you for your time here. And then if anybody else wanted to say anything before we give the floor to Lori, you're more than welcome.
Yeah, I just chime in. Really, Paul, all the things you mentioned. I mean, I think the bell schedule is something you should be very proud of, and I know you did a lot of work, and it wasn't easy work, and it was the right call. And I think and I wasn't serving with you at that time, but I think the way that you approach the issues that we deal with is very thorough, and I really appreciate the thoroughness of your data analysis and the way that you can kind of tie that together and bring it to questions here. I know I've really benefited from that. It's really helped me make decisions and understand the data. And whether that was the process with the bell schedule or the boundary process that we went through, I think that's one thing that's really stood out to me as exemplary, and we'll miss. I think we're really going to miss that analysis, and your passion for early childhood is amazing. And I hope, I'd like to say all of these are very important issues, and we're going to continue with that same passion, but I think your voice, we're going to have to keep that alive here at the board table to push on those issues that, we can easily forget about. And you don't forget about those folks, and you don't neglect to point out the fact that it's not an easy answer, and it's not just that we don't have enough, it's not the right type, and it's not in the right place. And so I'm going to miss that. And then just commend you for finishing your term. I think that's great, and it hasn't always happened recently, so I appreciate that. And then, the occasional ride home. It's been great, and just your friendship. And I'm going to miss you here at the board table, Lori.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'll jump in. I just have something real quick, so I'm not going to list off all your accomplishments because it's too many. But more from a personal note, you have a great sense of empathy. You really understand the other folks that are up here with you, and so I know you understand our community as well and our students. But as a colleague, I know there are times when I've been clearly frustrated about something, or just quiet and not talking about something, and you have taken the time to ask me either what's wrong, or is there something else you needed to say about that, or is there something else, and just being able to be invited to share the feelings there, that's a very important skill that you have, and I have appreciated it on a very personal level, so thank you for that.
So I'm going to piggyback off Sean, I mean, you've done amazing things, won't list that, but some of the things that people don't always see is that empathy. I don't know who's going to be the nurse mom for me, because whenever I got sick at the board table, you were the one to come check to make sure I had what I need, and who's going to be my Clementine buddy. If I forget, you always have one, and vice versa. So I really do appreciate that care and compassion that you have shown me for the last 2 years, especially the check-ins whenever we're dealing with something tough, or if you thought I've had a rough night, the follow-up text or the phone calls where you just want to check in and see how things are going, and just random texting. So I'm going to miss that quite a bit, but I know that you're not going anywhere. You're still in the community. So who knows, maybe you'll get a random text from me, not about word stuff, but just to check in and see how life is going. And thank you so much for your service. And I'm not saying bye, but I'll see you outside of the boardroom.
Yeah. I remember the first time we spoke after we got elected, and I appreciate your advocacy for those that don't have a strong lobby, and advocating for those that don't send a lot of emails and don't show up at meetings. And the community benefited from your being here. We came on with 5 people. 2 of them for reasons didn't finish. So your toughness and tenacity, sticking with it, it's not a easy position, as those that serve know. Your kindness and your leadership when you were in the vice president position, I know on my part that I felt that when you were in a leadership position that information was shared with board members better than any other time. And I want to thank you for that, and appreciate everything you did, and taking my calls when there were issues on my mind and needed someone to talk to. So appreciate that, Lori, and wish you all the best in the future going forward. Thank you.
I don't know what to say to all of this. You're all very, very kind, and this has been quite an experience. I just say it's been quite a 4 years, and I had a really tough time deciding, as many of you know, all of you know, actually, because you all talked to me a long time about it. Had a really difficult decision, difficult time making a decision about when it was the right time. If this was the right time for me to step down. I'm really excited about some of the other things I'm going to be putting my energy into, and I feel like I've given my heart and soul to this position, and I don't regret my 4 years here at all. It's been tough, but it's been worthwhile. I just want to thank the fellow board members, the staff, the teachers, the paras, all the staff of the district, and the students, parents, community members. I've just met some phenomenal people in this role that I would not have rubbed shoulders with otherwise. And it's really an honor to be able to know some of the just tremendous folks that we have within our district as staff, and also our students, and very passionate community members as well. And I just appreciate having been given the honor to serve for 4 years. So thank you.
Thank you, Laura. And once again, thank you for that. Have fun on your vacation.
Well, and I have to say, I very much apologize. I thought that tonight was my last meeting when I booked my plane tickets, so I apologize, and I won't.
It's not a contest, Lori.
I won't.
But I will be at the next one.
I won't be able to say I made it to the end, but almost. But yeah. And I do want to say, Phil, since I won't be here next time,
Okay.
I very much appreciate having worked with you. We've stuck it out from beginning to end, and it's been a long 4+ years. We've
That's
had
right.
the longest term of a single board member term with our extra 2 months.
That's right.
Thank you, Iowa Legislature. And anyway, it's been an honor to serve with you.
Thank you. That's what it has been for me.
And with that being said, I look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And then the motion, the meeting is adjourned, and we'll start the work session in the back of the room.